Hmm. Huh. Huh. Yeah. I think I like this. So, after so much waiting, what feels like an eternity of waiting, Cardfight Vanguard IF has finally started airing. And what do I think? Yeah, I'm pretty optimistic so far. Cautiously optimistic. Don't worry, I'm not going to make that mistake twice. But I do quite like what I see for various different reasons. And I do know this is a controversial episode. Yes, seriously. This is one a lot of people really hate. But I like that. And that's not just me being a contrarian. It's more so that this episode actually had something to hate about it. That's the thing. Vanguard has been so content recently on just being fine that I feel like it's not really been doing anything all too special. It's just kind of been coasting by. And the fact that this episode actually takes risks and people can hate it actually means something. I don't know a single person who hates the Shindou Monarch. I know a couple people who love it, but I certainly don't know anyone who hates it. And that's because most people are like, it's fine. Whereas this episode, people actually hate it because it puts forward enough ideas for it to be hated. Now, the problem with this episode, and the reason it's so difficult to judge, is because, well, yes, it's only one episode. And this episode, more so than any other Cardfight Vanguard episode, is mainly a bunch of, at least the way I like to think about it, it's a bunch of promises that Bushiroad are giving us, because there's a lot of really, really interesting stuff here, but it very heavily relies on how it's executed in future. See, a lot of these concepts and ideas are stuff that could lead to a really interesting and fun plotline, but it could also just lead to basic surface level pandering. And don't worry, we'll get to the Chrono Jet Dragon neck in a sec. Because I think, honestly, that's the part of the episode people should have the most strong opinions about, not the magical girl element, because we'll be talking about the magical girl stuff another time. Again, this is mainly me just focusing on getting my opinions of the first episode out there. And the magical girl stuff, it's good. Actually, I think it's the strongest part of the episode. The magical girl stuff is really, really fun. They really kind of commit to it. You've got the transformation device, you've got the transformation sequence, you've got the action scenes, like actual proper action too. Not just, the usual card game anime stuff. Like, no, you have people fighting each other, which is cool. The villains, I love. The villains are called the Jammers, and they're very over the top and kind of exaggerated, and I really love that. It's really leaning into it very hard. It's not ashamed of the fact it's a magical girl anime now. It's really embracing it, and that's my favorite thing about the episode so far. It really feels like a magical girl series to me, and I really, really like that. It's embracing a lot of the tropes, and it's doing some interesting stuff with it. I really love that the villains are like monster of the week type villains, right? But they're disguised as humans. But the Vanguard twist on it is that the monster is a Vanguard card, and the kind of human disguise, of course, is the person in the Vanguard anime who uses that card. So you've got Juggernaut being used by Morikawa, and you've got Greyon being used by Buki. That stuff's really fun. I really like it, and I also just really like that Emmy is already a magical girl. I was expecting this to be a fairly vanilla, basic, just introductory episode that was like, here's Emmy, she runs to Shuka. Shuka's like, hey, magical girls are a thing. And Emmy's like, no, they're not. Shut up. But then Emmy starts getting attacked by monsters and stuff. And she reluctantly transforms. And then action sequence happens. And then she's like, I guess I'm a magical girl now. And, I was expecting a very basic first magical girl episode. Not that formula is bad, but it is very overused. And the fact that immediately as this episode starts, she's already a magical girl is a fun way of subverting her expectations and just being like, yep, we're just going straight into it. Which is good because it balances out Ibuki's plotline, because Ibuki's plotline is where we really start to get bogged down in exposition, because the first half of this episode is basically just Gnome sitting down and telling Ibuki what the plot of this series is. Now, it's done pretty well, don't get me wrong, and I get that exposition for these kinds of series can be pretty difficult, but that doesn't negate the fact that, yes, a lot of this episode is just Gnome telling Ibuki the plot. And I'm interested to see what they do with that plot. So we've got a bunch of villains known as the Four Generals, and one of them is Morikawa, and it's heavily implied, if not outright confirmed, that the rest of the Four Generals are also characters that we're familiar with within Cardfight Vanguard. And their leader is Aichi. Okay, there's big thing number one. Cool, it looks like Aichi might be the main villain of this arc. Don't worry, we'll get to it in a sec. But then thing two is that everything that's happening, this whole like weird sort of like multi-dimension catastrophe type event, is happening not just because of something Ibuki has done in the past, although that does have part to do with it. I like that they acknowledged that the Deleter's arc did in fact happen and still matters, but also something that Ibuki is about to do, and I like that. It is a very interesting handling of it, though. Basically, Chrono Shindou, the second Vanguard protagonist, the protagonist of Cardfight Vanguard G, he gets his Vanguard deck and gets interested in the trading card game because he finds a deck of Vanguard cards in his school locker. So when in this episode, Ibuki is told to put this deck in a school kid's locker, yeah, that's what I meant when I said that this could end up being a really interesting and fun plotline, or it could be shallow fan service. Same thing with the reveal of Aichi being the villain. Really interesting plotline, or just shallow fan service. Because Legion Mate did a similar thing, and it ended up amounting to a fairly fun and interesting plotline. But it very much could have just been fan service, and I'm worried that's what they'll do here too. And that's what makes this such a difficult episode to judge, really. You know, like we have to see how things pan out. But of course, that doesn't really fly when it comes to an episode review, so I'm going to try and come to a conclusion anyway. I like Shuka. Shuka's fun. She hasn't really done much yet, but I like her. I like that she basically serves as the pre-Cure Fairy character, the character who just gives Emmy her abilities and stuff. I do hope we get kind of a flashback or something showing how she got her powers, or even just an explanation. We don't necessarily need a full flashback dedicated to it, but some more context would help, although I do love that we did just start with her already being a magical girl, of course. I really like this theme that they're doing with Ibuki about, like, preventing yourself from becoming a bad person, because when we left off, Ibuki was going through that character arc where he was starting to become self-aware and wanting to become a better person, and so him having to confront a future version of himself that's gone back down that path again of being a bad person, and that being represented by Grayon, is great. I really love that, and I really look forward to seeing what it is they do with him, and I quite like the jokes and the humor. I don't think it's like the cleverest humor in the world or anything, but it's certainly a massive step up from the previous Vanguard story arcs when it comes to comedy, because it's self-referential stuff. You've got stuff like Morikawa being confused and angry that he's already written out of the story. That was a really good joke. And then there was also the very obvious one where Ibuki is very confused that every conflict isn't just settled with card games. And I like that. I like that kind of acknowledgement. It's very silly and it's very brash, but I'd rather have something silly and brash, especially when it comes to this Magical Girl series. Again, it's trying to be a Magical Girl series, and I think that tonal shift works, especially considering that they have very much differentiated it into its own world. We're now in the world of IV, so to speak, not our main universe. Now, of course, our main universe is still at stake. If our characters fail here, then I mean bad things for the main universe too, but it also means that the sillier jokes, the more heightened and exaggerated characters, and these very wacky sort of villains and stuff, they work a lot better here. Now, if I was to have a problem with this episode, an actual problem that doesn't just rely on, we'll see how things shake out in the future, it would definitely be some of the writing, mainly the fact that we start off with an action scene with Emmy near the beginning, where she uses her magical girl form, And then she fails, right? She loses the fight and she wakes up again. And later on, Emmy mentions that when that happened, it caused her to time travel to the future. I'm not sure how that works, but I guess we'll explain it later on. But the thing is they very much downplay this, and this is already a series about two different worlds, a third one if you count Planet Kree as one of them, and now we have time travel in there, as well as it being so downplayed. We just kind of mention the fact that we're in the future now and don't really dwell on it. And I could see that confusing people and tripping people up. I just don't know why we needed the time travel stuff, except, we needed a Buki to confront his future self. And we needed Emmy to stay the same age. And it's weird. I feel like more time to kind of really flesh that out. And I don't know, just something feels a little off about it. It's a bit clunky. It's not written quite as gracefully as it could have been. But other than that, the writing's pretty good. The jokes are funny. The characters are likable. I like Buki, by the way. A lot of people are complaining, or at least I've seen some complaining, that they've got a bit of Buki fatigue. He's been a major player in every Vanguard anime for quite a few years now, actually. Like he played a big role in every series of G. He played a big role in Neon Messiah, the big movie. He played a big role in the V series, with one of the story arcs literally being named after his deck. And he played a big series in the Dimensions arc. And so him being one of the main four characters here again, I don't mind it though. I think he's one of the very few characters who's actually better in the V series than they were in the original universe. I think his character arc is a bit more compelling here with, it's a fairly basic redemption story, but there's nothing wrong with a fairly basic redemption story, And I like that they're pushing that further. We're still going with it. If we ended with the Dimension arc and never saw that version of Buki again, I would have been disappointed. And so I like that we're actually seeing more of that, and I want to see where they go with it. Because G Buki and Dolita arc Buki are two very different characters, and I want to see the transition between that. And that's the other thing. We're still doing the G reboot bait thing, aren't we? I was kind of hoping we'd left that at the door with the Shindou stuff, but we're still going with the G bait reboot. Like, for example, we've got a Buki here, and we're teasing the G version of himself. We've got Chrono's deck in his locker, and all that other stuff. I mean, again, at this point, I've lost interest. I never particularly cared about the idea of having a G reboot, and the Shindou arc only made me more bored of it, so I've completely lost interest in the G reboot, but luckily that's not the most important thing happening here. There still are other moving pieces in this episode that don't heavily require your investment in a G reboot and the G characters, so I think that's good too. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with Suiko in future. She didn't really get given that much to do here either, but I'm sure that there'll be an upcoming episode focused around her, so I'm looking forward to that. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where the story goes, because yes, we've already kind of plotted out some of the important plot points. We know that Chrono's locker is going to be important here. We don't know for how long. We don't know if that's going to be something settled within the next episode, or if that's going to be something that's important for the entirety of this anime. We don't know. But we also know that we're going to be taking out Aichi and his generals. There's a lot of theories going on about that. I really like Emmy's ability to summon Kree units. That's really cool, and I like to have that built into the design of her staff, with her staff having 4 white Vanguard cards floating around at all times. That's really cool. I like the theories going around, and there's a lot to speculate on with, Aichi's the villain of this arc, but Emmy's using Blaster Blade and wearing Aichi's coat. So what's the deal there? Is this a Legion Mate thing, where he's the quote-unquote villain, but he's being the villain for a sympathetic reason and still helping out Emmy anyway by giving her his coat and Blaster Blade? We don't know. And I'm interested to see where we go there. Again, there's a lot of mysteries and stuff being set up, and I'm interested in seeing how they get solved, and that's their hook. How are they going to get Vanguard fans to watch a Magical Girl anime? We're going to have this mystery here revolving Chrono's deck and locker and Aichi. And I like that. I want to see where it goes. And Emmy ended up being a surprisingly likable protagonist. She doesn't get given a whole lot to do in just this one episode, but I do like her here. And I like the shared balance between her and Buki. I think the two really kind of work off each other surprisingly well. And I think this cast of characters is a wisely chosen one. I already like this cast quite a bit. I'm really looking forward to seeing where this goes. I like the exaggerated magical girl sort of aesthetic and feel to this series, especially with the villains. And I like the animation, the art style. It's definitely above average here, but I don't know if that's just because it's the first episode or not. And yeah, I just really like it. That's basically all I have to say for now for this first episode, but don't worry, even outside the context of the first episode, there's still a lot to discuss with this series, and I will continue to make videos about this story arc for as long as it interests me. So I guess we'll see, right? But right now, I'm very interested. I'm very, very interested. I like Magical Girls. My favorite anime is a Magical Girl anime, and I love Cardfight Vanguard. So for me, it's a match made in heaven. And I'll be interested to see how this works out, right? So I'll see you later with some more Cardfight Vanguard videos. I want to know your opinions of this episode and your predictions and everything for this arc as a whole as to whether or not you'll like it. And again, we'll be doing a video talking about the more general stuff as to like why they made this arc in the first place in a future video. So I'll see you later with some more Cardfight Vanguard videos. I'd recommend you subscribe if you want to and like the video, and I'll see you later.